welcome to the 35th edition of the DOK.fest Munich. Welcome to our online edition of the festival under the title DOK.fest at Home 2020. My name is Michael Stadler. I'm a presenter of this festival for years, and I'm very happy, we are actually very happy that we have the film The House on Wannsee Street in our program. It's a film directed by Poli Martínez Kaplun. She's a director from Argentina. We show that film as a German premiere in our section Doc Focus Lasting Memories. We have several films there that deal with the remembrance of National Socialism, and it's about the witnesses and the legacy of that time. We are very happy that we have a cooperation partner for this film. It's the Jewish Museum here in Munich. I'd like to thank Ulrike Heikhaus, who is a curator of the Jewish Museum. She already gave me beforehand some interesting questions I'm supposed to ask my interview partners later, and they're really good questions, so I will do that. I hope I will do that fine. And before we start the conversation, I'd like also to point out the Kino Publikumspreis, the Audience Award, which is donated by the BR, and Dreisat. And now I'd like to welcome here on two frames the director of the film, Poli Martínez Kaplun, and her mother, who's also a protagonist of the film, Helen Kaplun. Hello.
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 Can you hear me well? Everything okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Beforehand, it's kind of a standard question at the moment, but we have Corona times. It's the reason why we have the festival online. How is it actually at your places? How's the situation for you during those times? Maybe Poli first.
Well, we are not allowed to go outside. That's very strange moment that we are living here in Argentina, like everywhere, I think. And since 40 days, we are in our house. We only can go outside to buy some things to eat, but the industries, the cinemas, the restaurants are closed. That we are very worried about the economic crisis that could come after all that.
And you're at Buenos Aires at the moment?
We live in Buenos Aires.
And Helen, where are you at the moment?
I live in Buenos Aires too, and very near to my daughter Poli, and I have another daughter, Mariana. And as I am more than 70, I cannot go out to the door. There's a very strict restriction, and due to the help of my daughters, they bring me the food to my house. So I'm here in quarantine.
Okay, I think we in Germany have it a little bit better than you at the moment. We will see. I guess, were you already working on another film project, Poli, or? I'm trying
to take advantage of my time, and I am writing another documentary.
Okay, the film we are talking about is your second feature-long documentary.
Yeah.
And I think most of the people who are now watching this conversation will have seen the film, and if not, they take this as an appetizer with some spoilers in it. I think it's you delve into its research about your family history, and your mother is also one of the protagonists who gives you quite good information what happened in the past. But and one central thing is actually the religious orientation within the family, or the religious identity, especially German Judaism, I would call that. Was that something that was talked about in your family before you made the film?
No at all. It was something that I really didn't know about my history, my family history, the past of my family. I only knew that my mother was born in Alexandria in Egypt, and my grandparents always used to live in Switzerland, and I have family in Venezuela and Spain. I have all my family spread around the world, and but I didn't know the real story. Why at what time they fled from Berlin. Why? What happened with the Nazism and my family? And as we don't have traditions, Jewish tradition in my family, I even didn't say that I was Jew. Then I had a lot of question about my identity or my family identity. Were they Jew at that time? We still being Jew or not? What is the Judaism too? No, what is the big question? And it was something that I have in my head maybe from years. And when my mother, because I tell that in the film, my mother started with her sisters to recover, to start the papers, to had her house in Wannsee Lake in Berlin, and she had the house finally. At that time, I realized and I decided to go to Berlin to shoot and to know the story. It was a moment to start to know and to return, to go to Germany and to have because it was the first time. It was my really first time that I went there. I went where my grandmother was born, where she grew up. Then for me it was very significant.
Mm-hmm. And Helen, how did you feel about that? I mean, was it something, was there a kind of denial about that or silence about the religious identity within your family?
No, it wasn't silent. It wasn't spoken about. That's the funny thing. Because you see, I was born in Egypt, as Poli told you. That was in 1942. My elder sister was born in Cyprus, because in Cyprus she got her nationality, English nationality, in 1938. But in Egypt you didn't get a nationality because we were Europeans. So I wasn't recognized as Egyptian. And this was something, an enigma. I think you say enigma in English too. And it somehow had a mystery where it had something of charm. But it didn't bother me, because when we came into Argentina, we were baptized. We were not allowed to come into Argentina as Jews. This I didn't know. I did know that we were baptized in a small chapel in Switzerland. And as Poli tells you in the film, this was due to a very strict law in which Jews were not allowed to come into Argentina. So we were told to get baptized. And so we came in with the baptism of Protestant, and that's how we went on. My father was a very cultural and intelligent man. He said that this was, it wasn't a problem for him. So we did go to church until I was 18, and to a Protestant church. I was confirmed in a Protestant church until I thought, this is not what I believe. I go for social gatherings and meetings with young boys, but not because I did believe in all this. And curiously, all this became a problem in my mind. What is to be a Jew when I was around my 30s, between my 30s and my 40s, which is curiously enough the same age when Poli started to think about herself as a Jew.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting that your son Nikolai is kind of also initializing this film, actually, that he celebrates his bar mitzvah and actually decides for that religious identity. I was actually wondering, did you talk about to him about that? Why he did make this choice?
Yeah, even right now I don't know why he did it. Maybe he has a friend who he had friends who did it, then he wanted to do, or maybe it's a inconscient family story that starts in him. But I think it wasn't a religion identity that I am talking in the film. It's an identity. No, it's a question of origins, no religions.
Mm-hmm,
and he felt something about that, his origins, and that helped to me to ask to start to ask me some question about how to tell to him about that, our story, our identity. And it's a true story.
And you trace back the family history even 7 generations back. But I also wanted to talk about your great-grandfather or your grandfather, which is Otto Lippmann, who was actually a German Jew, you could say. I heard different versions about him. Can you tell us something about what kind of man he was? And I also heard different versions about his death. I mean, there's an official version that he died of a heart attack, but it was 1932, so maybe it also had other reasons. So maybe you can talk also about that.
Helen?
You want me to go on? Yes. Okay. We didn't meet, of course. My grandfather died before I was born. I have the family version. I have the family version of my mother. He was a very intelligent professor at the, I can't remember right now, the university in Germany, in Berlin.
Humboldt. I think it's Humboldt.
Humboldt, yes. Einstein was also in Humboldt, and Einstein lived in a very near quarter from Wannsee, as much as I know. And my grandfather was a philosopher and a psychologist, and he was interested in working problems. He has several books on working problems. And he founded the Gestalt movement with Köhler, Kafka, and they had meetings at the house in Wannsee once a week, and where they gathered and they discussed all that was actually what they theoretically were going to work on. He had a very, his son, his eldest son, Hans, had a motorcycle accident and he passed away in Madrid. And this shocked him. And this was 1 year before he'd passed away. So we don't know. And on the other hand, he didn't receive the title of professor at the university. He kept the title, I think, of associate. I'm not very sure what I'm telling you. But this, together with what happened to Hans and what was starting to be a movement in Germany, I think all this together made something in his heart, and he went to have a nap, and he never came out of that nap. Okay, but one is not sure whether he maybe also took his life or he died of a heart attack. This was told by someone we met with Poli, Rudi Brandt, who was a psychologist at the police at the DDR. And he wrote about this, and at the end of his dissertation, his hypothesis is that my grandfather may have taken his life. Mm-hmm. But this was never spoken at my family, and I can't say yes or I can't say no. I don't think so. He was a very, I'm a psychoanalyst, and what I know a bit about all this is that he was a very interested man in life, in what's in his surroundings. He was very severe too. He had very severe thoughts, and he was very, as at those times, one thing is to have a son, and the daughter was left to one side. The women were not very taken notice of. Mm-hmm. I mean, it would also, I mean, his existence was kind of destroyed also by the Nazis. And I think later in the film, there's a kind of a central moment when you have the conversation with your youngest sister and her husband, which is kind of the climax of the film in a way. And also, I found it quite irritating that the husband, Fernando, kind of refuses to acknowledge that your grandmother, Emily, fled out of Germany because she was afraid what could happen to her. And he's kind of very insistent of saying, no, it was not the case, and that she was not supposing herself to be a Jew. Can you explain that? What exactly also happens in that scene? You want me to go on? Or Poli, maybe?
Poli.
Yes.
I think it was really a first time that we talk about that in the family, around the family, because I think there are some families. I discovered that when I made the film, families who escape and who could survive from the Nazis and from the genocide, or even from the war. I think there are lots of painful in Europe and especially in Germany too about that. The way to protect their life and to start and to go through the future was not talking about the past, not talking about sad stories. And I think in my family was the way to survive, not talk about the past. And that's mean not to know about the past and not know about the history of the family. And we discovered that in this conversation in my family. My aunt all have her theories and her theories about the history, about their past. And it's incredible because the fact is one, but the theories are very different and a lot. And yeah, there are people who, I think there are people who find a way to go to the future, not talking and denying the sadness story of the past. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm agree with you.
We haven't talked about the how. Yeah, or
I want to add to this that both my sister and myself, we married to Christians. Poli's father is Martinez, and my brother-in-law is Gervasi. But the difference is that Martinez is not a believer. We didn't grow the children as Jews or Catholics or Christians. That was nothing spoken about in our family. And in my sister's family, to be a Christian was important. And she became a firm believer in Christianity. She is a believer. She does go to church. And this is important. Poli shows it in the film with her grandchildren.
Mm-hmm.
So it was not very surprising that she came out with this climax.
Okay. We haven't talked. I think we have like 2 minutes more for the talk. We haven't talked actually about the house, which is giving the title for the film. And I was wondering actually, when did it come about in the process of filming that you realized, okay, the house can be a good center for telling the whole story? And I was also wondering, it has really an interesting history of being your property, then becoming occupied by the Nazis, and then you kind of gained it back, which was kind of a triumph, I guess, also for the family. Maybe you can comment again about that. And also, I was wondering, in how far did the German government help you financially also with the restoration of the house after the fall of the Berlin Wall? Maybe Poli first.
It was very hard to have the house. It took 10 years because we had my mother is the heroine of the story because she could have the house after fighting during 10 years, showing the proofs. One of the main I told that in the film, the main proofs were the photos of the families. That's a way to prove that the family, that Lippmann family built the house, and the house were from there. And but the family of that Nazi people who took the house during the war claimed for the house too. Claimed for a house, yeah. Mm-hmm. Wanted to have the house too. Then it was a fight, and finally my family could have. And for us was were very symbolic, no, for all the family to have the house of Otto Lippmann, and the house where my grandmother grew up until her 27 years. She had lots of life there. And for me, for example, to go to the house and to live there and to be there with the cameraman was very significant because it's my. It was very. Yeah, I felt my, it was a family home, and all the sightseeings, no, the Wannsee, the Potsdam, it was a discovery for me. It's my origins, mis raíces. Helen, I don't know how do you say.
My origin, yes.
And for me it was very important. This house is very important. Even to go with my children and show to them, no, the house and Germany and Berlin and the lake. They are their origins too.
And Helen, for you, I mean, it was kind of a struggle to get it back.
Oh, it was a fight, because when the Mauer came down, and we got a letter from the lawyer saying that it was time that we could do something with the house, but we had to look for another lawyer because this one had decided to retire from his office. And there we started the battle, which took, as Poli said, 10 years. To your question, the government of Germany did not help us financially. They only helped us that a law, the Germans have very strict laws And all the papers of the house, we could find it. You have an apartment in Potsdam where all these papers and what happened with the house was very well registered. So we had to get a lawyer, and during 10 years, we took this engagement. It was not easy, it was full of frustration, and on the other hand, we had also to deal with all the people who lived in the house. The house is very big, and there were about 4 or 5 families living there. So when we started with all this, and when the government recognized that we had the right of going on, we had to keep on paying the way out so that we could get the house. And this was thanks to the help of also my eldest sister, who was in a better position to finance us all this, what happened during all these 10 years. It was very, very a long way, full of ups and downs until we finally got the house. And it was really a triumph. And Poli shows it very well, and I thank her for this film. This film was something very important for us too.
I think that's a nice way to end the conversation. I think actually, Helen, you can also talk German and French and every language. So maybe
yes,
you
of
say
course.
Goodbye.
Das mache ich. Auf Wiedersehen. Und hoffentlich gefällt das diesen Film. Es war sehr wichtig für uns auch.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much also, Poli, for the film. And it's great that we have it on here at the festival.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I hope you like it.
Oh, it was great.
And I want another thing, I would like to hear about about you German people think about this story. No? It's important for me too. Yeah.
Yeah,
then
actually,
I'm very excited to show my film in Germany.
And actually you have also the possibility to win an audience award. So I will remember now everybody. So bitte don't forget the Kino Publikumspreis. And yeah, thank you again for being here with us. And for all of you who haven't seen the film, you can watch it. I think it's until the 7th of May. So there's a lot of time still to see the film.